The 7th edition of the Global Business Summit was held recently to bring together visionaries, thought leaders, policymakers, academicians and corporate heads to cohesively drive this agenda and exert the momentum needed to achieve this glorious vision. The event was graced by the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi.
Friends, आपने इस वर्ष के ईटी ग्लोबल बिजनेस समिट की थीम री-इमेजिन बिजनेस, री-इमेजिन द वर्ल्ड, ये थीम आपने रखी है। ये आज के समय के लिए बहुत ही रिलेवेंट थीम है, क्योंकि जब देश ने हमें सेवा का अवसर दिया तो हमने पहला काम यही किया कि जरा भाई री-इमेजिन करें। 2014 में स्थिति ये थी कि लाखों करोड़ों के घोटालों की वजह से देश की साख दांव पर लगी हुई थी। पॉलिसी पैरालिसिस की वजह से इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स में बरसों की देरी हो रही थी। इसलिए हमने तय किया कि गवर्नेंस के हर सिंगल एलिमेंट को री-इमेजिन करेंगे, री-इन्वेंट करेंगे।
5G, again a matter of great pride. Prime Minister launched it on 1st of October 2022. Within first 100 days, we have covered more than 200 cities. And recently at Davos, the industry leaders actually gave statements, and they were published in Wall Street Journal and all, that this is the fastest deployment happening anywhere in the world. But what gives bigger happiness? What gives bigger happiness is not just the pace of deployment. It is the development of India's own 4G and 5G technology stack.
It is certainly clear post-COVID that the demand for talent in the tech space, both in India and abroad, is at an all-time high. In the semiconductor space, where there is such a shortage of talent, the government working with the industry has created a future skills program which will be implemented by 23 April in the higher education and the academic ecosystem in India, which will start churning out whole spectrum of activities that span the semiconductor sector. And I suspect that that talent will be talent that will be deployed not just in the Indian semiconductor ecosystem, but also the global ones.
The Global Business Summit 2023 also organized many thought-provoking discussions and keynote addresses by the doyens of the industry. Sandeep Sethi, Managing Director, JLL Work Dynamics in West Asia, was a part of the panel discussion titled Strategies to a Resilient, Reliable and Ready Future, Talking Beyond Climate Change, where he emphasized that there are immense opportunities for a just energy transition in India and the work has also begun. Here are some highlights.
Sandeep, you deal with so many clients, right, who want to actually go on the net zero journey. What are your conversations like?
We've realized, and I think everyone has, so I'm sort of stating the obvious, but bear with me, that this whole transition, be it to net zero or just energy transition, is not a solo effort. It requires the entire ecosystem of corporates, governments, consumers, everyone to come together. Fortunately, what we're seeing is corporates are playing a very important role, but they're also doing a very good job. And one of the key drivers with corporates is that the employees that work for these corporates, they've certainly said, we want to work for a purpose-driven organization, and they see sustainability as a very purposeful agenda. So they're putting some sort of a pressure on the corporates. Now, more and more corporates are making commitments or pledges around sustainability. Many have made net zero commitments. Many have said they're going to address their scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Now, scope 1 and 2 are easier to manage because they're within your control. Scope 3, you have to work with the ecosystem and you have to work with factors that are beyond your control. And that's where they're struggling, because that makes up almost 90% of their emissions. But at the same time, by addressing what's happening with the vendor ecosystem, with the travel, commute, etc., they're creating a lot more awareness. Proof in point is the CII's Green Building Council in India started off, I think, in 2001. And they had only about 500,000 square feet of certified green buildings then. Fast forward to 2022, it's over 10 billion square feet. We have the second highest portfolio of green rated buildings in the world in India. 44% of the stock that exists for corporates in India for office space is green certified. I would say almost 100% of stock that comes in new is green certified. So there's clearly something that corporates are doing right. They're leveraging the ecosystem. There are a lot of startups coming into this PropTech game. In fact, 30% of all global PropTech funding came to India in the last 5 years. There are companies that are working on Scope 3 emissions. There's a company that works on green transport for employee commute. That's just one example. There are many companies that are getting into real estate, getting into PropTech with no background in PropTech, but they want to make a difference. So personally, I feel there's a lot of learnings that we can take from the corporate sector's efforts and take it to the other sectors as well.
But Rohit, when you look at any kind of a proposal for energy transition that comes to you, right? Because when Fazil talks about energy transition and talking about business switches, it costs money, right? And when a report comes to you for funding that, how are you looking at it, right? Because there will be just transition aspects that will be built into that, and they cost money.
It is very, very critical because it comes to the heart of the bankability of the project. Because if you have social issues that are left unaddressed, it is going to create complications. In execution, there'll be delays. You can be sure there'll be intervention from various stakeholders. And ultimately, there's a cost and the viability of the project come into question. So you have to look at these things.
When we talk about investment, it's not only about money. It is about investing on people. Even the CSR projects that any of you have, please remember not to invest on any hardwares, but invest on people so that the society itself will be ready for this transition.
Well, if we look at the status quo here in India, only 22% of business leaders are actually incentivized towards reaching their sustainability goals. And they are also saying that only about half of the workforce is really actively engaged in sustainability topics. So I think we must start by taking responsibility. And of course, from a governance perspective, board members play an important role in putting the right incentives.
This is a whole of society challenge, and so we have to be working together. You've got fundamentally three levels. You've got governments, regulators, central and subnational. You've got producers and you have consumers. And I think that India is a fantastic case study in increasingly all of these levels rowing in the same direction.
I think the growth, what we plan for, is what we need to be really careful. So first is what you have existingly, make sure you reduce the impact without impacting the people's life. And two, whatever you're trying to grow, make sure you are accountable for it, be transparent and take all the stakeholders in account and make sure it's on the green path.
One last comment from Sandeep. We always thought about energy transition as a shield, which is more of compliance and defensive. Can you make it a sword?
I look at it through two lenses. One is, of course, I'll tell my clients that there's a huge business opportunity here. If we have to come to 500 gigawatts of renewable and non-fossil fuel power in the next, let's say, decade, we've got to spend at least $200 billion. Think of the multiplier effect that's going to have on the economy, which means the businesses have to treat this opportunity as once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Second thing, I'll tell the businesses that there's nothing stopping them even today. There are market mechanisms in place today, be it open access, green tariffs, renewable energy certificates. There's group power plants you can establish. There's so much you can do even today. I'll encourage them to fast-track that journey and make the transition happen quicker. That's what I'll say.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Sandeep Sethi also took out time for a one-on-one interaction where he expressed his views on the changing business dynamics and business priorities. Here are some snapshots from his interview.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to begin this by asking you, with changing dynamics, business dynamics, how do you think organizations are adapting to different business priorities?
So it is a very tough time for sure. We had barely come out of COVID, and then we had the Russia-Ukraine war. There's the imminent recession. There's supply chain constraints. There's so much happening, and businesses are definitely under a lot of pressure. Some are doing better than the others. Some will survive, some will not. But it's a good opportunity for everyone, every business to pivot itself and align with the changing world. I can take the example of the industry I represent, real estate, and how we pivoted. And the big business challenges that most companies across the world are facing today are related to talent management, sustainability, and resilience. And what we felt as an industry, and I'll give credit to some of my competition as well, is that all these three challenges or these three priorities, they play to the core of what we as real estate industry can address. And we started looking at the whole situation through a very different lens. What we realized was that real estate wasn't looked at, was considered to be just a fixed asset in most organizations. We helped them understand that if you have a good real estate strategy, it can be a great lever to attract, retain, and engage talent. And that helped us change the value proposition. We went to market with a different storyline, and that allowed us to help the businesses see the connect between real estate and employee engagement. We hear a lot about employees not coming back to the offices, but if I told you that 2022 was the best year for real estate in India, you'd be surprised. But we had more offices that were leased out in 2022 than ever before, right? So that's one example of how we pivoted, went to the market with a different storyline, and created a value proposition around it. The other example is sustainability. What most organizations didn't realize is that 40% of emissions in the portfolio, in the businesses, is coming from real estate. And that allowed us to once again go to market with a different storyline, different set of products that allowed companies to reduce the emissions from real estate. Another example is around resilience. Now, what is resilience? Resilience is nothing but the ability of a company to adapt to changing times and not just survive, but thrive as well. And real estate is very important for many businesses because it's very expensive. It's probably the second most expensive line item after salaries. We're helping companies look at real estate strategies, and whether it be consolidation, expansion, whether it be expanding to tier 2 cities or building a hub and spoke strategy, etc. We're helping them do that, and in the process aligning them with the changing world. So we've created a new set of products that we take into market that's helping us, but at the same time creating a business impact to our clients as well.
Right. How do you think businesses in this space, real estate management companies, entities, how can they stay ahead of the curve? If you can share some examples as well.
So once again, we've realized, more so in the last couple of years, that real estate is a topic that's of great interest to CHROs, CFOs, and CEOs because of the reasons I mentioned earlier as well. There are some themes that we've seen that basically we're seeing across progressive organizations that's helping them stay ahead of the curve. For example, many organizations have considered hybrid to be the new normal. So many organizations are operationalizing the new hybrid, or hybrid for the new world. Flex policies, for example. Many organizations are looking at operational efficiencies. They're cutting down on their real estate footprint, but at the same time, they're not doing it in a manner that's going to impact their ability to attract and retain talent. So in some cases, they're spending more on real estate by reformatting workspaces or by opening offices in tier 2 cities so that they can bring the offices closer to the employees instead of asking employees to come back. The other trend that we've seen is to do with data. Almost every organization is investing in data to understand real estate utilization better. They're also investing in data to understand how real estate is contributing to carbon emissions. This data investment is going to allow them to have better insights, which will allow them to of course, run their portfolios better. But at the same time, help their employees become more productive, because real estate is really allowing employees, real estate should be managed in such a way so that employees can engage with the business in a better manner using the real estate. The other example is climate change. a lot of companies are seeing that employees want to work for organizations that are purpose-driven, and real estate is responsible for 40% of the emissions. Hence, a lot of companies are focusing on building new offices that are green certified, that have a bigger focus on wellness, for example. They have greater strategies for waste management, water management, etc. To give you a couple more examples, we're also seeing a lot of offices focusing on leveraging the entire ecosystem. Companies that are progressive have realized they don't have all the answers themselves. They have to partner with the entire ecosystem, be it established companies outside in the value chain or even startups. So we're seeing progressive companies really approach real estate through a very different lens. And these are some of the examples that are helping them stay ahead of the curve.
Right. If you can also share some of the initiatives JLL has been undertaking, especially when it comes to your net zero commitment and also industry partnerships.
Sure. So JLL is a company that has already made pledges around net zero. We've said that we are going to be net zero by 2030 for our own portfolio, and by 2040 for the portfolio that we manage on behalf of our clients. And that's actually 90%, that's scope 3 for us, and that's 90% of our total emissions. For scope 1 and scope 2, what we're doing is we're ensuring that every office in JLL India, for example, is either gold or platinum LEED certified. We're also looking for well rating. At the same time, we've done a lot in terms of waste management and water management as well. We've also redesigned our offices, and if you walk into an office today, it doesn't seem like a workplace. It's an office where people feel very welcomed, they feel very included. It's got a lot of color, it's got a lot of fun, play elements in it, and it's just a place that employees love coming to work every day. In addition, we look at this whole topic through the lens of ESG. So there's a lot of focus on social aspect as well. There are 5 themes that we focus on in JLL India from a social perspective. We're focusing on child welfare. We're focusing on women and minority community empowerment. We're focusing on sustainability. We're focusing on skilling, and we're focusing on disaster relief as well. In addition to that, we've taken the lead in partnering with some other companies in the form of coalitions to bring in green power, not just to JLL sites, but to our client sites as well. At the same time, we're looking at, through coalitions again, decarbonizing the construction industry in India. So we're part of various initiatives like these in India.
Well, that's incredible. More power to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lata Pillai, Managing Director and Head Capital Markets at JLL India, also graced the occasion and expressed her views on the market trends for investment in India.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to understand some of the key trends, that are prevalent in the industry today, especially in terms of investments.
See, the real estate sector has always been of interest in the country and for investors. And we have seen a regular let-up of investments happening. And 2022 was a landmark year with almost $5.2 billion worth of investments which were made in the country. And this was, last year was at a dip. Others on an average, we've always seen around 5 billion. And last year was a 5.2 billion. And sectors which are of interest for investors remain the office sector, the residential sector. The new kid on the block, as it were, would be the logistics and industrial segment, and data centers. So this probably would be the.
So commercials continue to be the preferred option, but like you mentioned, warehouse and data centers, they're also emerging. What kind of opportunities will it create for the real estate industry going forward?
See, I guess for any institutional investors to come in the logistics space, I think getting ready grade A stock for logistics is, we do have a lot of logistics stock available, but not necessarily grade A and not necessarily institutionally owned. And therefore, there's a lot of investment coming in for ground up developing very good quality grade A space. Right. This is in keeping with the growth of the entire sector itself. And also on the industrial side, it is the China +1 strategy that as India we are pushing for, right? And it is in keeping with both of these that there is interest, and there is a lot of investments and platforms that have got announced in this particular space. And as far as data centers is concerned, again, because of the boom in the digital business per se, I guess this is a sector which has seen a lot of investments. And again, it is something which needs a lot of capital outlay, and you find a lot of enterprise guys really going ahead and making those investments. So these two are the new sectors which are really seeing a lot of traction, other than the original or the stuff that one is aware of or one knows of. Yes.
Right. So REITs in retail, that's like the next big move, in real estate spaces. As institutional investors, they are now building their portfolio of grade A, like you mentioned, retail assets. So what are your thoughts on this?
As you know, post-COVID, one of the sectors which really was, which came out and was rebound very well, it was the retail, basically the retail sector within the country. And institutional ownership of that retail is something which has actually happened over a period of time. And I think the kind of, the pace at which that particular sector has really grown, and the way the malls and shopping centers have performed, have given the fill-up to basically grow this particular business. And that is something which is actually being pushed for by institutional investors as well. And I guess a REIT in the retail space is something which one we are aware of, that one has been announced, and there is the next one which is going to go off the block. And the REIT per se, the exit through the public market route is something which I think with the three REITs which are already there on the office side and the one on the retail side, I guess that has given a lot of confidence, both on the investor side, and also the understanding of that particular market is also grown on the retail side. When I said retail investor side. So which actually just helps the entire market to get more institutionalized, be able to attract more capital. And because whoever comes in as capital investors today are looking for exits of their investments, and a retail way of exiting or a public way of exiting is something which is always preferred. That's also one of the options that is preferred. So I think REITs and how well the REITs are doing, or the more REITs that come into the market, only helps the market attract more capital, and which is the need of the hour for a country which is growing at the clip that we are.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lata.
Thank you.
Global Business Summit 2023 has been at the forefront of driving a singular agenda for scripting economic change by connecting the building blocks of economics for India and the globe. GBS serves as a conduit for corporates and governments to secure investments from domestic and international allies that will become a part of India's growth story.